Alhamdulillah, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, may peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Have you ever noticed how loud the mind becomes when the heart is tired? How a single negative thought can spiral into an entire world of fear, doubt, and imagined endings? Sometimes it isn't the situation that's breaking us. It's the story we keep telling ourselves about it. And in those moments, we forget something essential. We were never meant to carry the weight of the world alone. There is a quiet truth that Allah teaches us. A truth the heart remembers when the mind finally becomes still. Allah says that He is closer to you than your jugular vein, closer to your thoughts, closer to your fears, closer to the trembling inside you that no one else sees. And when Allah is that close, what thought could ever be bigger than His mercy? Sometimes we fall into negative thinking because we look at our lives only through the lens of what is missing. We stare at the closed door and forget the one who closes with wisdom and opens with precision. What you call delay, Allah calls preparation. What you call disappointment, Allah calls protection. And what you call heartbreak, Allah may be using as the very moment your soul wakes up and returns to Him. Remember, the Prophet taught us that Allah is with the brokenhearted. So when you feel overwhelmed, when your mind keeps wandering into the dark corners of what if and why me, this is not a sign of your weakness. It is a sign that your soul is longing for its Creator again. Negative thinking is not defeated by fighting the thought itself. It is defeated by remembering who is in charge of everything the thought fears. This is what sabr truly means. Not suffering silently, not pretending everything is fine, but turning each moment of uncertainty into an act of trust. Sabr is saying, Ya Allah, I don't understand the path right now, but I know you never misguide a heart that seeks you. Sabr is choosing faith over fear, even when the fear feels louder. Shaitan whispers, you're alone, you're stuck, you're failing. But Allah says, do not fear, for I am with you. Shaitan shows you the storm. Allah shows you the one who controls it. So every time a negative thought rises, respond with a remembrance, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel, Allah is enough for me. If you want to stop negative thinking, bring your heart back to the present moment, the moment where Allah has placed you with purpose. Fill that moment with dhikr, fill it with gratitude, fill it with the quiet certainty that nothing in your life is random. Every delay has wisdom, every loss has purpose, every tear has meaning in the eyes of the one who counts them. And when your mind begins to wander again, as minds do, gently return it to Allah. Because the journey back to Him is not a single step. It is a constant returning, a constant realignment, a constant remembrance that you were never abandoned. Your thoughts can deceive you, your fears can exhaust you, but your Lord never leaves you. And the heart that remembers this becomes unshakable. The mind becomes heavy when the heart forgets its connection with Allah, because the human being was never created to function on thoughts alone. We were created to think with the mind, but live with the heart. And when the heart disconnects from its source, from the one who gives it life, clarity, and peace, the mind begins to carry burdens it was never meant to hold. This is why even small problems can feel overwhelming, why simple decisions feel impossible, and why the smallest worry can echo so loudly inside us. A heart that forgets Allah tries to find stability in a world that constantly shifts. And because the world is unstable, the mind begins to tremble with it. It is in these moments that negative thoughts multiply. The heart becomes dry, and the mind becomes a place of noise instead of serenity. We begin to overthink every detail. We rehearse our fears, and we imagine scenarios that may never happen. We start believing the whispers that say we are alone, that we are unsupported, that we must figure out everything by ourselves. But the truth is, a heart anchored to Allah never feels abandoned, even when life becomes difficult. The weight lifts the moment we remember that Allah is the one who manages every affair, who controls every outcome, who knows every secret fear inside us. The mind becomes lighter when the heart returns to dhikr, because remembrance acts like a gentle rain washing away the dust of doubt. When the heart reconnects with Allah, clarity returns. The mind begins to trust instead of fear, to hope instead of assume the worst. It starts seeing challenges as opportunities for growth rather than traps of despair. The heaviness slowly dissolves, not because the situation changed, but because the heart remembered where true peace comes from. Negative thoughts grow when we replay pain instead of returning to the one who heals it, because the heart naturally gravitates toward whatever it dwells on the most. When we keep revisiting moments that hurt us, conversations that disappointed us, or fears about what might happen, we unknowingly create a cycle where the mind becomes a constant echo of our wounds. Pain is real, and Allah never asks us to deny it, but He does invite us to redirect it, to bring it back to Him. The one who turns sorrow into wisdom and burden into elevation. When we replay our hurt without turning to Allah, the pain sits inside us without guidance, without meaning, and without light. It becomes heavier, darker, and more distorted with each replay. The heart was not created to heal itself alone. It finds its relief in the remembrance of the most merciful. But when we try to process everything only through our own strength, we start believing the narratives our pain creates, that we're not enough, that things will not change, that we are defined by what broke us. Yet none of this is the truth. Pain speaks loudly, but Allah speaks with truth, mercy, and purpose. Returning to Him doesn't erase the past, but it reframes it. It turns the memory of hurt into a stepping stone, not a prison. Every time we choose to replay our suffering, we give it more space to grow. But every time we choose to turn our thoughts toward Allah, even for a moment, we water the seeds of healing rather than the seeds of fear. When the heart leans into dua, into Quran, into surrender, the grip of negative thinking loosens because the soul begins to taste a peace that doesn't depend on the story in our mind. It depends on the one who writes our destiny with perfect wisdom. Every fear has a root, and its root is forgetting who is in control. Fear grows when the heart begins to believe that outcomes rest entirely on our efforts, our plans, or our limited understanding. When we forget that every breath, every opportunity, every delay, and every closed door is held by Allah's command, the world suddenly feels unsafe. The mind starts imagining the worst because it thinks it is the only protector it has. Fear becomes louder when certainty in Allah becomes quieter. And in that space of forgetfulness, negative thoughts find an easy place to settle. We fear losing people because we forget that their presence was written by Allah and their departure would only happen by His decree. We fear losing opportunities because we forget that risk is chosen and delivered by the one who never miscalculates. We fear the future because we forget that Allah is already there, arranging it with the same precision that brought us through every hardship in the past. Fear thrives in the absence of divine awareness. It grows in the shadows created when the heart looks at life without remembering the one who runs it. But the moment the heart remembers Allah's sovereignty, fear begins to shrink. Not because the situation has changed, but because the perspective has. When we remind ourselves that Allah is Al-Qadir, the all-powerful, the mind no longer feels responsible for outcomes it cannot control. It can rest, it can breathe, it can let go of the need to predict, to protect, to know everything. Fear loses its grip when the heart says, Allah is with me, I am not facing this alone. And with that remembrance, what once felt terrifying becomes manageable because the soul remembers that nothing can touch it except what Allah has written. And Allah writes only with wisdom, mercy, and purpose. Allah's decree is never against you. It is always for your purification and elevation, though the heart often struggles to see this in moments of hardship. When something painful happens, the mind immediately interprets it as a setback, a loss, or a sign that things are going wrong. But this interpretation comes from limited vision. We see only the moment. Allah sees the entire path, where you came from, where you stand, and where you need to be. His decree is not random. It is crafted with precision that the human heart cannot comprehend until time reveals its wisdom. There are moments when the qadr of Allah removes something from your life and you feel empty. Yet that emptiness is not meant to break you. It is meant to create space for something purer, deeper, and more aligned with your soul. There are delays that feel frustrating, but those delays protect you from a timing that would have harmed your heart. There are endings that feel harsh, but those endings are written so that your heart can begin a chapter that leads you closer to Allah. His decree is not a punishment. It is a process of reshaping your inner world, removing what blocks your light and strengthening what makes your faith grow. When we forget this, negative thoughts grow. We begin to assume the worst, thinking that life is unfair or that destiny is working against us. But Allah does not wrong His servants. Every test carries a hidden mercy, every hardship carries a hidden lesson, and every disappointment carries a hidden redirection. What hurts today may be the very thing that protects you tomorrow. What feels like loss may be the start of a deeper gain. When the heart truly understands that Allah's decree is always for its elevation, it stops resisting life and starts trusting the one who writes it with perfect care. The soul finds peace when it replaces worry with remembrance, because the heart was never built to survive on anxiety. It was built to find rest in the nearness of the one who created it. Worry is like a storm inside the chest, circling, repeating, and growing louder the more we engage with it. Remembrance is like light. The moment it enters, the storm begins to settle. When the heart turns toward Allah, even for a breath, something inside shifts. The fear loosens. The noise softens. The weight becomes lighter, sometimes without anything in the outside world changing at all. This is because dhikr realigns the soul with its true center. We worry when we forget that Allah is the one who controls outcomes. We worry when we forget that provision is written, that protection is guaranteed, and that no harm can touch us except by His wisdom. Worry feels natural only when the heart feels distant from Allah, because in that distance, everything seems uncertain. But remembrance brings the heart back to the truth, that Allah sees, Allah hears, and Allah takes care of every detail that overwhelms us. When a person fills their moments with dhikr, they begin to notice a subtle inner transformation. The same situations that once triggered overthinking suddenly feel manageable. The problems that once looked impossible begin to feel purposeful. The silence of remembrance becomes louder than the noise of worry. Even repeating a simple phrase, La ilaha illallah, subhanallah, or hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil, becomes like an anchor holding the heart steady in a world that constantly shakes. Remembrance does not erase hardship, but it reframes it. It reminds the soul that it is not navigating life alone. It reminds the heart that Allah is nearer than every fear and more merciful than every sorrow. Through dhikr, the soul finds a peace the world cannot give and a clarity the mind cannot create on its own. Trust, or tawakkul, transforms what feels unbearable into something meaningful, because it shifts the entire weight of your struggle from your hands into the hands of the one who never fails. When we rely solely on ourselves, every challenge feels heavier, every obstacle feels personal, and every delay feels like punishment. But the moment the heart says, Ya Allah, I trust you with this, the burden begins to change. The situation may remain the same, but the heart carrying it becomes different. Trust opens a door inside the soul where fear begins to dissolve, not because life becomes easier, but because you no longer carry it alone. Tawakkul does not mean you stop trying. It means you try with a heart that is calm instead of a heart that is drowning in fear. It means you take the means while knowing the outcome was never in your control to begin with. It means you move forward even when the path is unclear, because you believe in the one who sees what you cannot. When you trust Allah, every hardship becomes a lesson, every delay becomes a preparation, and every disappointment becomes a redirection towards something better. A heart without trust becomes exhausted. It tries to predict the future, control the uncontrollable, and fix things that were never its responsibility. But a heart filled with tawakkul can breathe even in uncertainty. It understands that Allah is al-wakil, the best disposer of affairs. He does not abandon the ones who hand their worries over to Him. He does not ignore the tears of a heart that whispers, guide me. Tawakkul brings meaning to pain because it reminds you that nothing you face is wasted. Every difficulty is written with purpose. Every struggle contains hidden mercy. And when you trust Allah fully, even the storms in your life turn into pathways that lead you closer to Him. Patience is often misunderstood as simply enduring pain, but true sabr is much deeper and far more empowering. It is not passive, nor is it silent suffering. Sabr is an active state of the heart, a conscious choice to surrender with hope rather than resist with despair. It is the gentle whisper inside you that says, Allah knows. Allah sees. Allah will carry me through this. Patience is not about pretending the hardship doesn't hurt. It is about refusing to let the hurt define your relationship with Allah. It is choosing trust even when your eyes see difficulty, and choosing peace even when your heart feels the weight of uncertainty. True sabr brings dignity to your struggle. It turns waiting into worship, pain into purification, and hardship into a bridge towards spiritual growth. When you practice sabr, you are not standing still. You are moving, transforming, becoming stronger in ways that only Allah can measure. Patience allows you to see beyond the moment, beyond the discomfort, beyond the confusion. It reminds you that every hardship carries a divine wisdom, even if that wisdom has not yet been revealed. The heart becomes more resilient when it holds on to hope while sitting in the middle of sorrow. Without sabr, the soul becomes fragile. We begin to rush destiny, force outcomes, and resent delays. But with sabr, the soul finds a softness that is not weakness but strength. It becomes capable of facing storms without losing itself. Patience is not about waiting for life to change. It is about changing the way the heart waits. It is choosing gratitude over bitterness, surrender over resistance, remembrance over panic. When sabr fills the heart, even the hardest moments become pathways to closeness with Allah, because the heart knows that nothing written for it can ever pass it by, and nothing withheld was ever meant to harm it. Heartbreak becomes a doorway to closeness with Allah when we respond with faith, because every pain that enters your life carries a hidden invitation from Him. When something breaks inside you, a relationship, a dream, an expectation, the first instinct of the heart is to collapse inward. It feels as though the world has narrowed, as though a piece of you has been taken away. But what we often forget is that the breaking is not meant to shatter you. It is meant to open you to reflection, to humility, to deeper reliance on Allah. There are forms of closeness that only grow in the soil of loss, and there are types of worship that only awaken when the heart has been softened by grief. When heartbreak happens, the soul becomes more aware of its neediness. We stop pretending that we can carry life alone. We stop relying on people in ways they were never designed to fulfill. We realize, sometimes painfully, that every attachment besides Allah is fragile, temporary, and limited. It's in these moments that the heart naturally turns upward, searching for something permanent, something steady, something that cannot be taken away. And it is in this searching that the closeness begins. The tears you shed in solitude become a form of dua. The sighs of exhaustion become a silent conversation with the one who hears what no one else hears. The pain becomes a teacher guiding you back to the one who never leaves. Heartbreak, when met with faith, strips away illusions. It teaches you to depend on Allah with a sincerity that comfort rarely brings. It shows you that even in your most vulnerable state, you are held by a Lord who is more merciful to you than you could ever be to yourself. And slowly, the wound that once felt unbearable becomes a place where you feel Allah's nearness more clearly than ever before. Shaitan feeds the mind whispers of "you can't," while Allah tells the heart, "I am with you." And this contrast is what creates the inner battle most people experience. Negative thinking often begins with a whisper, a quiet suggestion that you are not capable, not worthy, not strong enough to handle what lies ahead. These whispers rarely shout, They slip in softly, disguising themselves as your own thoughts. Shaitan knows the vulnerability of the human mind and aims for the cracks created by stress, fatigue, and fear. He plants doubt where there was once clarity and fear where there was once trust. His goal is not simply to make you sad, but to disconnect your heart from the certainty that Allah is always near. When you are overwhelmed, the whispers become louder. What if you fail? What if everything goes wrong? What if you're not good enough? These thoughts drain the heart and cloud the mind, leaving you feeling stuck and alone. Shaitan wants you to see life through the lens of impossibility because he knows that a believer who remembers Allah becomes unstoppable. The whispers of "you can't" are meant to make you forget all the times Allah carried you, healed you, and opened doors you never imagined. But Allah tells the heart something entirely different, not through fear, but through reassurance. In the Quran, in the stories of the prophets, in the quiet moments of dua, Allah reminds you, I am with you. I hear you. I will guide you. His voice enters the heart as a calmness, a clarity, a strength that does not come from yourself, but from being anchored to Him. When the heart listens to Allah instead of the whispers, the fear dissolves. You begin to realize that you are stronger than you feel because you are supported by the one who never leaves. The battle between the whispers and the reassurance is real, but the heart always finds victory when it turns toward Allah. His presence silences the doubts, strengthens the spirit, and replaces every "you can't" with Allah, you can. Healing begins the moment you stop fighting what Allah has already written, because much of our suffering comes not from the event itself, but from our resistance to it. When something painful enters our lives, the mind immediately begins to wrestle with it, questioning it, rejecting it, replaying it, trying to rewrite a moment that has already passed. This inner battle exhausts the soul. We grieve not just the loss or change itself, but the insistence that life should have unfolded differently. Yet the heart finds no peace in arguing with destiny. Peace begins when we surrender to the fact that what reached us could never have missed us, and what missed us could never have reached us. When we stop resisting the decree of Allah, we create space for healing to enter. Acceptance is not about liking what happened or pretending the pain doesn't exist. It's about acknowledging that Allah, in His perfect wisdom, allowed this moment for a reason that may not yet be visible. It's trusting that every page of your life has been written with care, even the pages that feel heavy. When the heart stops fighting and starts trusting, it's as though a tight knot inside begins to loosen. The same situation that once felt unbearable becomes something you can breathe through. Healing begins when you say, Ya Allah, I don't understand, but I accept that this is from you. That acceptance softens the wound. It transforms your relationship with the pain. Instead of viewing it as something that destroys you, you begin to see it as something that shapes you. You start learning from it instead of running from it. You start growing through it instead of breaking beneath it. When you surrender to Allah's qadr, the heart no longer feels alone in the struggle. It feels held, guided, and carried. And in that space of surrender, healing takes root, quietly, gently, and with a wisdom far greater than anything the mind can create on its own. Your thoughts become lighter when your prayer becomes deeper, because salah is not just a ritual. It is the moment your soul returns home. Many of the heavy thoughts we carry are a result of trying to survive life with a heart that has not been replenished. When prayer becomes something rushed or distracted, the mind remains unsettled. But when prayer becomes a place of stillness, sincerity, and presence, the heart receives exactly what it has been longing for. In sujood, where your forehead touches the ground, something inside you is reminded of its true position. Not above your worries, not beneath them, but surrender to the one who controls them all. A deep prayer softens what the mind has hardened. It quiets the noise inside you because you are no longer thinking from your fear. You are speaking from your longing. In those moments, the soul whispers what it cannot express during the chaos of the day. A heavy heart becomes a lighter one because it finally releases the burdens it was trying to carry alone. Prayer becomes a spiritual reset, removing the layers of stress, confusion, and sadness that build up in the mind. The more present you are in salah, the more you notice that your thoughts begin to align with trust rather than fear, hope rather than doubt. When your prayer deepens, you start seeing your worries through the lens of Allah's mercy instead of through the lens of your limitations. You remember that you are guided, protected, and watched over. You remember that relief comes from the same one who created the difficulty. And with that remembrance, heavy thoughts lose their power. The heart that prays deeply becomes anchored, steady, and resilient. It does not mean life becomes easy, but it means you no longer meet life with an empty soul. You meet it with a heart that has been filled by the one who gives peace. And in that fullness, the thoughts that once overwhelmed you begin to fade into something manageable, something lighter, something guided. Forgiveness, both of yourself and others, frees the soul from silent burdens, because holding on to pain is like carrying a weight no one else can see. When someone hurts you, the wound may heal on the surface, but the memory can remain lodged inside, shaping your thoughts, your reactions, and even your sense of worth. Sometimes the person you need to forgive is someone who is no longer in your life. Sometimes it is someone who never apologized. And sometimes, most painfully, it is yourself. The heart becomes trapped when it holds on to resentment, guilt, or regret. These emotions settle quietly, influencing your inner world in ways you don't notice at first. They turn small thoughts into storms and minor doubts into anxieties. Yet forgiveness is the key that loosens these chains. Forgiving does not mean forgetting what happened or excusing the harm. It means refusing to let the pain of the past write the script of your future. When you forgive someone, you are not freeing them. You are freeing yourself. You are choosing to release a burden that has been draining your spiritual energy. Allah does not ask you to suppress your emotions. He asks you to rise above them with a heart that trusts His justice. When you forgive, you hand the matter over to Allah, allowing Him to be the judge, the healer, and the one who compensates you better than anyone else ever could. Self-forgiveness is just as necessary. Many people carry unspoken guilt, harsh self-criticism, and regret for choices they made when they were struggling, confused, or hurting. These internal wounds can cloud your thoughts and strip away your confidence. But Allah reminds you that He is Al-Ghafur, the most forgiving. If He forgives you, who are you not to forgive yourself? Growth is born from acknowledging the mistake, seeking Allah's mercy, and choosing to move forward with a softer, wiser heart. Forgiveness lightens the soul because it creates space for Allah's peace to enter. It clears the emotional clutter that feeds negative thinking. It reminds you that the heart is not meant to be a prison for old wounds, but a garden where healing can bloom again. The present moment is a mercy because it is the only place where your soul can truly meet Allah again. So much of negative thinking comes from living either in the wounds of yesterday or the fears of tomorrow. The mind drifts into what has already passed, replaying events you cannot change or into a future you cannot control. And in doing so, it misses the place where Allah placed His blessings, His guidance, and His nearness. The present. This moment right now is not accidental. It is chosen for you, shaped for you, and filled with opportunities for healing that disappear when the heart is too busy wandering elsewhere. When you bring your attention back to the present, you step out of the fog created by regret and anxiety. You begin to see the small mercies that were always there, the breath you just took, the strength that carried you here, the quiet ways Allah has been sustaining you without you even noticing. The present moment is where dua becomes real, where dhikr softens the heart, where patience is practiced, and where trust is built. You cannot experience Allah's closeness in a moment your mind has already abandoned. You experience Him here, now, in the stillness of what He has written for you. The present is also where clarity begins. Worries about the future lose their power when you stop trying to live in a day that hasn't arrived. The past loses its grip when you stop reopening old doors. Allah gives you this moment as a mercy because it's the only one in which you can choose faith over fear, gratitude over complaint, surrender over resistance. It is the place where transformation happens. Not in what was, not in what may be, but in what is. And when your heart finally rests in the present, you realize that Allah has been waiting for you here all along, offering peace that can only be found when you return to the moment He has gifted you. Hope grows when you actively choose to rewrite the story inside your mind with the promises of Allah, instead of the fears whispered by your circumstances. The thoughts you nurture become the lens through which you see your life. If you keep feeding your mind with "it will never change" or "I am not capable," your heart begins to accept these ideas as truth, even though they are only assumptions. But the moment you choose to bring Allah's words into your inner world, everything begins to shift. Hope is not something that appears on its own. It is something you cultivate, protect, and water with remembrance, dua, and trust. Allah repeatedly reminds us in the Quran that He is near, that He responds, that He is capable of all things. These are not just verses to recite, they are truths to anchor your life in. When you tell your heart, Allah can make a way, the heart softens. When you whisper, "Allah never leaves me," the fear loses its intensity. When you remind yourself, Allah's timing is perfect, impatience begins to dissolve. Rewriting your internal story is not about denying your struggles, but about refusing to let your struggles define the end of the story. It is choosing to narrate your life from a place of trust instead of a place of fear. Hope grows when you stop letting your wounds speak louder than Allah's mercy. It grows when you challenge the negative thoughts instead of accepting them. It grows when you interrupt the cycle of despair with even a single phrase of dhikr. You begin to notice that the moment you allow light into your thoughts, the darkness cannot stay the same. Hope is a spiritual discipline, a conscious decision to lean toward Allah's promises, even when your situation feels heavy. And with every small act of faith, the heart slowly learns how to breathe again, how to trust again, how to expect goodness from a Lord who has never stopped giving it. When all these principles come together, they shape a life rooted in clarity, strength, and unshakable purpose. Each key point is not just an idea to reflect upon, but a practical step that moves you closer to emotional balance and inner peace. Growth does not happen overnight. It unfolds slowly through consistent choices, small acts of discipline, and a sincere desire to become better than you were yesterday. The power to transform your life is already within you. It only needs your willingness to activate it. You must remember that peace is not something you find outside. It is something you build inside. No one else can do this work for you. Every time you choose patience over anger, understanding over judgment, and reflection over reaction, you reclaim control over your mind and your heart. Life will always present challenges, but the person who masters their inner world becomes unstoppable because no external chaos can defeat an inner calm. This journey is not about perfection. It is about persistence. It is about showing up for yourself even on days when you feel weak, tired, or overwhelmed. It is about believing that you deserve a peaceful life, a strong mind, and a healed heart. Let these principles be your guide, your anchor, and your reminder that growth is possible. Healing is real, and change is within your reach. Stand firm, stay committed, and never forget that your transformation begins the moment you decide you are worthy of it. Your future depends on the choices you make today. So choose strength, choose peace, and choose to rise.